Περνάμε τώρα στον Αντρέα Constantinou, ιδρυτή της Vision Mobile.
Okay.
Καλώς όρισατε.
It's a bit quiet here, so I wanted to ask who has fucked things up in their life? More than once. Good. I feel like you're feeling my pain. So I started by messing things up in terms of how I'm dressed. So I'm dressed like I'm going to the beach. I haven't shaved. But I'm going to tell you a few things that few mistakes I made as an entrepreneur. And hopefully some of these mistakes I can help others, maybe some people here, not make as entrepreneurs. So what do I do? This is my Twitter profile. I actually have 10 times that followers, but this is a really old version. No, I'm lying actually. But I have three capacities, which are these. So I'm going to tell you a lot about Vision Mobile and the mistakes I did there. I'm an adjunct professor at Lund University teaching internet business models and mobile industry dynamics, which is a very long title, but it's a really interesting topic. And I'm also an adjunct professor at ASOE, or Athens University of Economics and Business, where I teach entrepreneurship. So those of you who is an entrepreneur here? Is it like 5 hands? I'm disappointed. Maybe there's a few up there. Okay, 6. Great. So you can come to, it's part of the International MBA. You can sneak into the lectures if you like. I'm fine with that. It's once a year. That's a bit far away. It's up north in Sweden. And if you are working in software or mobile, you can come and join us at Vision Mobile. But I'll tell you what we do first. So this is me. I'm going to tell you about how I fucked things up here. Not too badly. I'm not going to tell you about how I fucked things up here. That's part of a different story. So, who's Vision Mobile? And we call ourselves the analysts of the developer economy. We have pretty much a low profile. Unlikely our clients, who are these guys there. A lot of the Silicon Valley companies. What we do is we help them understand developers, and we help developers understand the world. So what we do is we provide research where we track what developers do, what platforms they use, who they are, how many they are, what they buy, what tools they use, from mobile to cloud to IoT to lots of other things, and where they're going next. So what are the trends in augmented reality, in messaging bots, in lots of other forward-looking platforms. But I'm not here to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you about Vision Mobile. So firstly, health warning. If you know anyone at Vision Mobile, I have to kill you because I'm going to be telling you few sensitive stuff. So pretend you don't know anyone. So let's start. 10 mistakes I made as an entrepreneur. Number 1, never rest. I'm starting with a mistake I fortunately did not make because I'm a person that would never rest. Contrary to some people in my team who would say, well, you know, we've done a lot so far, so, you know, why don't we do what we've done all this time? So let me give you an example. We work a lot with developers. How do we get the data from developers? We run very big surveys. In fact, we run the largest developer surveys in the world. About 30,000 developers annually, and we survey those developers to identify who they are, what they do, what they like doing, what tools they use, and so on. And we've continually gone from 2010, where we started with 400 developers surveyed, to 2016, where we have 20,000 developers. We started with a few clients who were, you know, nobody knew them, to clients that everybody knows. We started with not knowing how to build a team and how to hire people, and I'm pretty happy to say that the entire team is an A-class team, with some exceptions which I'm going to tell you about. And some of them we've done away with, and I'm going to tell you about those as well. So another big mistake is, and I hear this a lot in Greece, unfortunately. I have an idea, let's copyright it, let's patent it. Like, it's something precious, and if you patent it, it's gonna stay with you, and it's gonna stay with you forever. But it's like the stupidest thing I've heard. Because like fashion and food, business models have no copyright. Have you heard of Rocket Internet? Rocket Internet? Rocket Internet is a business model copycat. They look at what works in other countries in the US, they copy it in Europe. They have 300 startups copying what US companies do very well. They're a funking copy machine of huge proportions. You should read about them. Actually, Venture Friends, which is Apostolakis' new venture, is very much about copying what's worked abroad in Greece. And so what's wrong with patenting things? It's that you cannot race ahead of others by protecting your ideas. The only thing you can do is run faster. So every time we've had people copy us, and we've had people copy us, like releasing some reports which look very similar to ours, or run surveys which are very similar to ours, we just continue to innovate. In fact, we now look at what the big guys are doing, names like Gartner and Forrester, which are big analyst firms, and we copy them, which is fine. But you should think reversely. Instead of trying to lock your ideas and protect them and like, shh, don't tell anyone, you should actually tell people. You should and be faster at executing those ideas than anyone else. In the age of technology, software, and VC money, there's no such things as protecting your idea. Somewhere else in the world, there's somebody else with the same exact idea and can run faster than you. Now, I started 10 years ago naively thinking that if you love what you do, everything else will follow. Of course, very naive, because at the end what happens is you go through 4 stages in a startup. You start as an engineer. An engineer is not just someone who writes code or can design buildings or whatever. It can be a cook, somebody who can bake a very nice cake. It can be a writer, right? Somebody who is creative and good at doing things. So you start at this guy, and then you start selling, right? And then you have to develop entrepreneur skills. You have to understand how to sell, how to take your idea into something that's presentable, something that you can tell with just a single sentence, and the other person will directly get what you do and why is it useful to them. Entrepreneurship is about taking the skills that you have and making them commercially successful, right? And you might be a small shop, that's fine. But that's what everybody goes through. Now, the next stage is more frightening, and it's something I've made a ton of mistakes. And it's management. So as soon as you start hiring people, you'll realize that people are not brain synced with you. So I think I'm a typical engineer. I have this assumption that people have a neural connection to my brain and they know what I'm thinking. So what I'm thinking, we should go this way, everybody else thinks they should go this way. No, of course it's not. There's no such thing as brain sync. So you have to manage people. You have to oscillate or balance between managing them and coaching them. You have to know how to hire people. You have to know how to reward people. You have to know how to resolve conflicts. So all of these things I was never taught. I made every single mistake in the book. And I learned to be a manager. And I'm still learning to be a manager. And I still make a lot of hiring mistakes, for example. And I would say that right now, probably 1 in 2 people we hire is a bad hire. And 1 is a very good hire because our standards are very high. But 1 is a bad hire and 1 is a good hire. So I'm still learning as a manager. And the last thing you do as you grow as an entrepreneur, the journey I took, is you become a leader. And once you have like 10 or 20 people, so now we're 20 people. So once you have around 20 people, you need to not just tell them where to go tomorrow or in 3 months. You need to show them where you want the company to be in 2 years. So that's the end of the road, and that's why you're going there. So you need a direction and a sense of purpose. So that's what a leader does. A leader gives a direction, a sense of purpose, and they have to be very clear and very compelling. And I've made lots of mistakes by not making them clear or compelling, and people were complaining and saying, you know, that's not a clear vision, and I don't know what we're doing, and I don't know how this relates to my job. And we understood that, we measured that, because every 6 months we have performance reviews and environmental surveys, internal surveys, where we, ask people, well, obvious stuff like, are you satisfied with your job and how much money you're making and so on, but is the company vision clear? Right? And so the mistake I made is not realizing that I could not just be an engineer and build a startup. You go through all of these phases. For some people it's natural. For some people you have to go through a lot of hardship and figure it out yourself. I think this is the mistake I continue making, even though I failed, 10 times probably so far. So you build something and you think in your head, oh yes, of course, our customers will love this. I can see it, and I don't need to talk to them because I'm so confident that they will like this. And you are drowning in your own confidence that you are blind. It's also called founder blindness, that you don't see that the customer is actually not going to like what you do. So what you need to do, you need to do what's called in Lean Startup customer development. You need to talk to them, you need to figure out what they're actually what they actually want to see from you. So for example, we've made lots of mistakes. We wanted to build data visualizations or visualizations of our data. So in one instance, we spent like 9 months building something before we ever talked to a customer. Nobody bought it. Second time, I think we spent 4 months. Again, the same thing, and again, the same thing. And you learn eventually, but it's very painful. You have to suffer in order for that learning to sink. About 2 years ago, when I did start learning, they called me into a meeting, and I felt like the big boss coming into the meeting, and there were like 6 people already there and saying, oh, we have something to present to you, and this is like what we're planning to do, and we just want to get you to say yes. All right, so what you're planning to do? And they were actually planning to build a big thing, which is another data visualization interface, but without actually having any customer validation. As I have to actually veto this, and I hate vetoing things, especially when they have so much momentum in the company. But what I said is, you have to wait until we have 5 customers for a really bare bones version of what you're trying to build, and then we build the soup and nuts, the cake with the cherry, the whole thing. Right? So you start with a bare bones version, you bring 5 customers, and then we build the bigger thing which you're trying to build from day one. So you need to start lean, and lean is not about low effort or fast. It's about very quickly iterating between building and learning and building and learning. And so many people make this mistake. I was advising a startup called Gimbo from some, university students a long time ago. They had a brilliant idea. It's actually an idea of building a LinkedIn for developers, which I still think is a great idea. But they spent 6 months coding, and maybe 2 days talking to customers. And eventually they gave up because they didn't see purpose. They didn't have any customer traction. They had their own classes at university, which took over the priority and so on. So they gave up because it's a great idea, but they didn't talk to customers. So you should actually spend more time learning than building. The other lesson is repeatable revenues are not scalable revenues. So there's actually 3 steps here. So when we started in 2010 running developer surveys, we had, it was then Telefonica who was building an API, and they wanted to get developers to know about the API. So I was on the phone call with them. It was November 2009, I think. And I said, cool, if you want to do that, what we'll do is we'll run a survey and we'll produce a report and we co-brand it, and the world gets to know about you because it has some soundbites, it has some interesting content, and developers get to find out about you. So that's how our current research, which now feeds the entire company, was born. But I assumed this was a repeatable model, which was actually very wrong. I assumed it was a recurring, but it was only repeatable. That means we could do it every 6 months. But then Telefonica, after a year, said, maybe we're not too interested, and we couldn't find other clients we were, so we had to pivot and change the model. And we could repeat it sluggishly without any guarantees, but it was not recurring. It was not a product, it was still a service. Scalability is where we're going now. So scalability is where you're able to take one product and sell it. Whether you're selling 10 products or 10 million products, the cost increment is relatively small. It's much smaller than the revenue increment. So that's scalability. Scalability, another way to see scalability is if you have a startup and the only thing you need to add is marketing and sales. Right? So for example, this is where Workable is now. They only need to add marketing and sales in order to sell, because the product is selling on itself. Right? But so what we do in terms of scalable products is we're now launching a product where we're helping developers score, for example, Amazon versus Azure versus IBM. I don't want to get too technical. I'm giving you some obvious names. But the mistake I made is thinking that what we were building was actually that we could put much more money into it and it would grow, and it didn't. The other mistake is, of course, you grow a company by adding people, and that's a really big mistake. You grow a company by managing people. So I've made so many mistakes here. One of the mistakes I made was when I hired someone in the early days, I gave him a senior title. He couldn't fit in the shoes. What was the problem with that? It was a great job title, like it was a manager title when he started. Right? But it took him a long time to fit in these shoes. And like a few years later, he still had the same title as he was just fitting in those shoes. But the guy was actually disappointed because he's saying, I'm in this company for so many years and you haven't given me a job, a different job title. Am I doing something wrong? Because I had given him a very senior job title to start with. So you should actually do the opposite. You should give someone a slightly junior job title and let them earn it. I also did the same mistake 2 months ago. I gave someone a very senior job title by not checking who they are and what they do, and I'm regretting it. And I have to solve it the hard way now. There's so many things about managing people. I'm not going to dive into this particular one, but I'm going to give you some examples in the next ones. So, another very common mistake. We need to hire someone fast. Again, it's about managing people, but specifically hiring. So what's wrong with hiring fast? You're hiring the wrong people. And of course, hiring the wrong people has a great cost to you. So instead, what you should do is hire slow, fire fast. Hiring slow means you don't hire unless you are sure you have the right person. We made this mistake early 2015. We hired a sales guy. I knew he wasn't the perfect sales guy. And he did manage to bring us some sales initially, but then 6 months on, I found, because I understood what selling means, I didn't understand initially, I found out all of the things he was doing wrong. And it took me 6 months to get rid of him. The funny thing is, he actually went to work for the competitor, and we hired the competitor salesperson, which doesn't happen often. But the thing I learned is you really need to hire slow. Only if you have found the right person, you should be hiring them. And you should check for skills, for attitude, and a few other things which I'll tell you about. But the other story here is firing fast. So we had a person who was working with us, I think about a year ago. She had passed all the skills tests and the aptitude tests and so on. And from the first week already there were some alarm signals, red flags. Something's wrong here. So that person, when they joined, they booked their holidays for 3 months in advance, like in the first week. They said, what are the benefits that I'm entitled to from the company? So they leveraged all the benefits, and they were always leaving on time at like 6 p.m. or just a few minutes to 6, but not caring what the rest of the company was doing. What was wrong with that is that person was really in the job just to make money, so they could enjoy what they did outside the work. And so for me, what's wrong with that is that I would like to hire people, I would only like to hire people that see work as something that is important to them and something they accomplish, something they're proud of. Not people who work just for the money. This is a very different bunch of people. They can go and work in a big consultancy, but not with us. So that person we fired within 3 weeks. And the reason we took 3 weeks is because it was hard to convince her manager that this was the wrong hire. And I was very proud of that decision, that we made it that fast, so I didn't sort of pollute the company. And the other reason you need to fire fast is because if you have the wrong person in the company, that person starts giving out signals. And the other colleagues will say, oh, look, that person is like laid back or is wrong in this or that aspect, and that person is giving signals that your company culture is changing in ways you don't want it to change. Another reason you need to fire them fast. Something else, you hire for skills and you train for everything else, right? No? No, you hire for attitude and you train for skills. There is no single person in my 10 years experience running Vision Mobile whose attitude fundamentally changed. People have ways of hiding certain characteristics of their attitude, but these never go away. They manage them, but they never go away. So if you have the person with the wrong attitude, you cannot change them. You have to accept them, or you have to let them go. So in fact, probably 80% of the questions we ask during the interviews are attitude related, not skills related. Skills questions we have at the very first interview, which have to do with take an assignment that is a typical example of how the job looks like. So we can make sure that their skills are a baseline. But the baseline is a baseline. The skills are what make a person much more valuable to your company in the future than they are today. And we have a specific list of skills that we look for and we measure. Things like that the value of the team is more important than the value of the person. In other words, what the team achieves is more important than what the person achieves. This is one very important attitude characteristic. So, that's one of the things we look for, and lots of other things. But I'll move on. The other thing, the opportunity will wait for you. And this is obviously wrong because your competitors are thinking and working at software speeds or VC speeds. So what does that mean? I was naive a few years ago. There were two or three UX people we wanted to work with, user experience design or UI design people. And you can talk to them on Facebook today, and you can meet them in a month somewhere else, and then you can sort of be friendlier with them in 2 months. And that's what you think initially, but then you realize that within 2 weeks they get a job offer, or maybe 1 week from a competitor. I made this mistake once. There was a UX person I really wanted to work with. She said, I'm too busy with this other project. And when she finished that project, she immediately moved to another startup. It was too late. There was a guy who I heard in a meeting that his startup was breaking up. And I said, okay, I'm smart. Actually, I will get back to that person in like 2 weeks and go out for coffee with him and sort of tell him about the company and so on. Within a week, he was already working for a competitor. You know, things move fast. People move fast. You cannot waste a day. Even in Greece, where we're not in the Silicon Valley, we're not moving as fast as the Silicon Valley, but startup hiring is very aggressive. And so if you're looking for someone, you better talk to them yesterday. The other thing I did when I learned this mistake was we had a guy who was working for, Dimitris, who was working for Rule Motion. Rule Motion eventually became Resin. But Dimitris I had approached early on. We were working in the same environment, and I said, you should come and work for us. And I was sort of trying to get him in the company for a long time. Eventually, when the right time came, he swapped. He swapped out of Rule Motion and came to us, and that was one of our best hires. But I was very, very, very persistent, so that's what I did differently. The people you really care about and you want to hire, and there's very few people that are really A stars, class A people, you need to zero in on them, build a relationship, even if it's just on a social friendly basis. Once in a while, when the right time comes, they'll move over. Last mistake, let's build a company so we can sell it. Lots of people think like that. Entrepreneurs usually think like that. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with making a bit of money? What's wrong with making a bit of money is that once you get, there's two things. So, in order to go big, you have to get VC money. When you're VC invested, you stop being a company and you start being a project. What that means is the VC who's put money in you doesn't care whether you're successful or whether you enjoy what you do. They care about getting a return on investment. And very often, they're the wrong type of VC because they don't understand your business. I was actually talking with a founder of one of the very well-known startups, who I won't tell you who it is, and he literally told me that their VC steered them in the wrong direction, and they lost what he thought, as the founder, was the major opportunity. And that's because the VC, didn't understand, didn't have time. It doesn't matter. But once you get VC invested, you stop being a company, you start becoming a project. The second reason why I don't believe in this exiting the company and on being an entrepreneur to make money is that it pulls you away from all of this. Enjoy what you do and be more. So my vision for the company, it's not about, let's make 20 million or 100 million or whatever. Is that when I walk into the office, I'd like to feel good about what I do, and I'd like to become a better person by what I learn, the challenges I face, the colleagues I speak with, people that are fun to work with, people that I have something to learn from. So that's the company I'm striving to build. Not a company that will exit, because if you want to exit the company, you'll make very different decisions to these. And in the entrepreneur's mind, this is not clear. You get excited because you're doing cool stuff, but then if you're wanting to exit, you make very different decisions, and very often you get into a VC, and very easily you get pulled into being a project and not a company. I think that's pretty much what I had to say. So hopefully you learned from some of these mistakes. This is an earlier version of the team. The company is visionmobile.com, and we are hiring, as every entrepreneur should say. Thank you very much.
Hello. My question is, how can you make the customers like the product? How can you know that they're gonna like it or not, or you don't at first?
It doesn't matter if the customer likes the product. What's important is for you to listen to what the customer is thinking. What problems does he want to solve? What things keep him busy at night, or awake at night? Learning by the struggles he or she is facing. Once this is really familiar and once you understand this, then designing the product will be like a eureka moment.
So basically you need to read the mind of the customer to know what he thinks or something.
You need to spend time with them, and you need to ask the right questions which probe not, oh, do you like this or do you like that? That's the wrong question. It's what things you want to get to make right, what things you want to change, what are the challenges you're facing, what really sucks when you go at work, whatever it is. It's different for each customer. But there's a certain art and science in doing that. The science part is called customer development.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. You spoke about the VCs earlier. Are you sure that startups need VC capital, or actually they need something like we call patient capital? I mean, patient capital.
Patient capital.
Patient, I mean, not something very aggressive. Venture capitals want their money within 5 years. Patient capital, like business angels or something else, can wait. I mean, you can wait to see what you do and collect their capital later. I mean, in Greece we have only the VC, let's say, expression, but I do not think that it is something that can suit the startup community.
Okay, there's a big difference between angels and VCs. I don't know if you know it. Angels manage their own money. VCs manage somebody else's money. Because of that, the incentives are very different. If you manage somebody else's money, that somebody else is going to come knocking on your door and saying, how is my investment doing? Right? If you manage your own money, you can put a bit of your own aspirations and beliefs and good faith in your investments. So angels, if you get invested by angels, it's a very different situation. And they will usually help you more. But VCs, because they manage somebody else's money, they themselves have to show a return on investment. So they will play smart in coming in as a boss and showing you where to go. And there's very, very, very few VCs. You have to be very lucky in order to have a VC that thinks in the same way that you do, and has the same vision about the company that you do, and doesn't mess with the way you do things.
If possible, do you think it's better to try and get several different sources of venture capital so that one venture capitalist can't call all the shots?
So, firstly, in general, a VC will not invest on their own, because what they're trying to do is hedge their bets, and they need to answer to the limited partner, which is the guy putting money in their fund. And so in order to answer to the limited partner, they will join forces with other VCs in investing in you, so that they can say, oh look, this other guy invested in the same company, so we probably doing something right. So in practice, you will be co-invested by multiple VCs. And usually a VC will have, or each VC will have a different stake, like disproportionate amount of stake. So somebody will be calling the shots. I have been in VC meetings where the VC swears against the founder, and knowing the founder who's super smart, and I believe they know what they do. Yet the VC is just, a guy who is, that particular guy In that particular case, a Danish VC, he was just too full of himself and not understanding where the business was going. It's just too easy to be in bed with people that you regret by taking their money.
Do you think there's a good way of sort of controlling the venture capitalists to some extent?
No, you need to do your own diligence, your own due diligence on the VC in the same way they do their own due diligence on you. And the only way you're going to do that is you speak to the startups that have been invested by the same VC, which is pretty easy to do.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Θα έχετε την ευκαιρία και για περισσότερες ερωτήσεις στο τέλος των ομιλιών.